Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's so nice to see as many of you as are here because it's such a day. So, and hi, Zoomers. I'm especially delighted because this is my all-time favorite topic ever, learning to love yourself. I taught a 3-credit course on this at my alma mater, Carlow College, once called Mount Mercy. So my challenge is to condense 3 credits into an hour and a half. However, we're going to do part 2, February 17th. But I'll tell you that at the end too. This requires 2 sessions, but I'm excited about it. This is the single most important aspect of your life. It affects everything. So I start with the good news. Each of you were born intrinsically good, intrinsically valuable. You were born lovable. You are a child of the Creator, and that you're inherently good. So given that fact, I mean, we can refer to Genesis 1:31, where it says the Creator looked at all that he or she made, and it was very good. So the question we're going to look at is, if everybody's born good, why do 19 out of 20 people not love themselves? And when I read that in The Road Less Traveled, which I often mention because it changed my life, by Scott Peck, psychiatrist, I said to myself, Scotty, that's too harsh. 19 out of 20? That's too cynical. But then when I taught my course, Women in Self-Esteem, for 10 years, I took 20 women each semester. That's 400 students I dealt with. I didn't give them a final. They had to write a paper in which they took what we learned about self-esteem and applied it to their journeys. When I read those papers, I cried a lot. And 19 out of 20 were damaged. And it was amazing. 19 out of 20, just like Scott Peck said, 10 years. So I'm convinced that people need this message. They need it. And I'm happy to share it. I'm very grateful for what I know about this. And so I want to remind you, if you've been here before, I have a couple requests. I ask that you share throughout our time together. If you have a question, it's always intelligence. Always. I respect every question. If you have a comment, I like it. I'm happy. If you have an example of a point I've made, or if you disagree, speak. Use your voice. Using your voice strengthens your self-esteem. So, yes, Sharon.
To add to that, when I started seeing a psychologist way back when I was young, so it was 100 years ago, one of the things he had me do at the beginning was to do a list of the things I liked about myself and the list that I didn't like about myself. I had like 2 things on the I like about myself list, and I had to struggle to get them. The other list was, way long. That is in conjunction with really what you're saying.
Well, thank you for validating that, Sharon. And we'll be getting into such details later about maybe habits that are hurting you and how to stop them. So my requests, share throughout, dialogue, be here now. It's so easy not to be here, right? To think about, what am I going to get for dinner? Oh, do I have to go to the grocery store again? No. Rein in those thoughts. It takes energy, but it's a wonderful life skill that we need, really, to be in charge of our thoughts, as I'll talk about next Saturday in Oakmont, but I'll mention that later. Too many things at once. I want to stay focused. Okay, the third request is not a request, it's a requirement. And that is, you must agree to confidentiality. Anything that any one of you say or anyone on Zoom must not be repeated. Agree. Say yes.
Yes.
And you're allowed to repeat what I say. In fact, I hope you do. Spread the good news. Okay, so with that, we can get to the most challenging part of this talk, is to describe how a baby's self-concept is formed, because that's where self-esteem and self-love begins, or not, deep in your childhood. So here is what happens. A baby is born good. In fact, I brought a baby picture because if you see a baby, okay, I mean, I only had my baby picture, but when I did the, I'll just pass it, please. When I did my class, I had them all bring in a baby picture. And when you look at that picture, you think, this baby is good and joyful. And so, but here's the thing, a baby until they're about 5 or 6 is like clay, molded by the mirrors put up to the baby in childhood, especially from the parents, the teachers, the daycare workers. And if those mirrors are positive and saying, excuse me, I don't know if they want to come in or not. Does any, Sharon, would someone ask? Oh, okay. Or maybe they just wanted to see the art, but I'm sorry, I thought I should acknowledge that. So the baby, again, if the mirrors are smiling and warm and your joy, then the positive self-esteem is happening. And I believe that most parents intend to be loving. However, life can get in the way and distract them. And what we're going to look at is that we're going to look at the childhood atmosphere, because that is as powerful as the words the parents or teachers say. And remember to interrupt me if this isn't clear, because I want you to really get every bit of this, okay? So when we look at the childhood, I never judge a parent that has encountered challenges and dysfunction. So know that, and it's really important not to judge them, but we need to look at how parents may have made mistakes if we want to heal the wound. Do they just want the art?
I came to see the art. One of the women out there has several that are hanging up.
Oh, okay. Well, they could walk through silently if they want to. What would you tell? Thank you, Sharon.
I think you can exercise today, whether I want it or not.
Thank you for being my helper. Okay, so back to our program. So we're going to look at 4 categories of childhood experiences in the household that make powerful impact on the child. And I'll give you examples, of course. But I wanted to say this briefly. A child that gets enough loving attention grows up pretty solid. Okay, so that's a phrase I want you to keep in mind. Enough loving attention. Because some kids get it, even though these, what I'm going to describe as dysfunctional, challenging household atmospheres that all begin with A. Abuse. Abuse and now remember, the child's growing up, they live in a house. If there's abuse happening, verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, it's going to make an impact, of course. And then we're going to look at abandonment. If there are 2 kinds, physical and emotional. So if a parent, I've had many clients who say, yeah, my dad left when I was 8, and my mother died when I was 12. And so if a child loses an adult like that, through nobody's fault per se, but if it isn't talked about, if the child doesn't get attention, they sometimes think it's their fault. He wouldn't have left if I was a better boy. So, okay, that's the second A. The third A, argumentative atmosphere. Again, I tried to make it A, but it's turmoil, it's fighting, it's noise. And the child is getting scared. And for this one, I always use the example in my 30 years of being privileged to have clients tell me their stories and their suffering. In 30 years, I've had a handful of men who showed up. You're not surprised, right? But one of the men that showed up told me this. When he was 6, he decided to commit suicide. 6. Here's why. His parents fought all the time, and then they added the verbal, "We were fine until you were born." Parents say things like that, and they're cruel, but a lot of times they don't realize what they're doing, that, they're the potters. You know that hymn, I am the pot, he is the potter, you are the clay. Well, the parents are potters forming this. And so many parents don't recognize their power for good or for ill. So the 4th A is addiction. When there's addiction in the home, almost always, it's pretty damn distracting from the parenting, right? And so most people, many people, I shouldn't say most, experience more than one of the 4 A's. So I'm going to use my own life whenever I can, because I've made this journey. I did not love myself till I was over 30. My mother didn't start loving herself till she was 68. So the good news is it's never too late. Okay, so children in these atmospheres draw conclusions that hurt them. And I'm going to name 3 conclusions kids draw, because remember, they're still engaged in magical thinking, little ones. They're not using their reason yet. And most little kids put their parents on a pedestal because the parents are feeding them and taking care of them. So there is a strong bond even when the parents are abusive. Somebody was telling me, I didn't see this, but a policeman was carrying an abused child out away from the mother, who had been really horrendous and hurting the child. And as the cop is carrying this little one out, he wanted to go back. He wanted to go back because we're drawn to the familiar. And he equated abuse with love, because it's the only attention he got, sadly. So here's what I want you to realize that children learn from the household atmosphere. They think the world is like their house. Now, let me give an example of that. So my house, I experienced most of the A's, actually. The abuse was verbal because my dad drank. So there's the addiction. So when he was drinking, he screamed, mostly at my poor mother. But so there we have the verbal abuse, we have the addiction, and really we have abandonment because she was preoccupied by him and he was preoccupied by addiction. So where did the loving attention go? You get it? So the repercussion on me, remember I said the child thinks the world is like his home. So I thought the world was scary. So what were the repercussions for me? I became shy, so shy. I just wanted to hide out. And then into adulthood, even before I got into therapy, of course, I had a job I loved. It was my first writing job. And the boss, Tom, wanted me to infiltrate a judicial campaign and be a spy so we could write about this guy, And I thought, oh my God, that's too false for me. It violated my values. But I was supposed to talk to him. I said, oh, Tom, I have to think about that. So I had begun therapy, and I told the therapist, Tom will get so mad. I have to say, no, I might lose this job. And Dr. O'Brien pointed out to me, Eileen, you're assuming he's going to be like your dad. You're assuming he's going to be an angry man. You see the repercussions. So I got my nerve up and I said, Tom, I just can't do it. He said, okay. Do you see how we create fears? Now that's an example of anxiety, fear of future loss. I was so afraid that there would be loss in the future. So, so the second lesson kids learn from these dysfunctional household atmospheres is what happens here is normal. In this, whatever, it's not only the world's like this, but it's normal. There's a slight bit of difference there. So that the repercussion of that would be, for example, and I would see this a lot when I heard stories. I keep going the wrong way. I'm trying to respect these Zoom people, and I forget. Abused people, especially sexual, often become abusers because they think it's normal. And when I was working at a prison, I'll never forget this. It was so dramatic. One of the long-termers said to me, well, I always thought it was normal for little girls to sleep with their uncle. So you can see what was happening in her house. And she thought all little girls do that. So many tragic things occur. But again, the good news is there's always hope for healing, but we have to be aware before we can heal. We have to know what to heal, right? So any questions or comments so far? You've been quiet except for Sharon. Don't hesitate, Sharon. I want you to use your voice. Don't hide out. Sharon got me water. She dealt with the artist. Thank you, Sharon.
You're more than welcome.
So, okay, the third lesson the kids take from the childhood atmosphere is if something goes wrong, it's my fault. Are you aware of that? No, we have a problem, Mark? Oh, okay. If anything goes wrong, it's my fault. And that reminds me of my friend LaDonna. I'm using her real name because she has shared this with groups. When she was 6, her uncle was there visiting and he wanted to kiss her goodnight. He was leaving and she didn't want to, which is good. She said no. And he died the next day.
Oh.
So can you guess what happened with her magical thinking? She felt responsible. Now, we have to hope that when kids get into this trauma, they have someone to help them understand it and process it, but that's often not the case. So, okay, so I wanted to move from this. If you experience some of what I've described to you, you might be carrying what we call a core negative belief about yourself. Common ones would be like, I'm not okay. Something's wrong with me. I really can't measure up. I'm always less than. I don't belong anywhere. I just don't matter. Now, those are devastating beliefs because people act in accordance with their beliefs. So we'll see where that goes. But for now, these beliefs are often semi-conscious or even unconscious, but we've got to uproot them because they're powerful. So I want to show you how that affected me. My core negative belief would be something like, I'm not okay. And I have 2 vivid memories of when that was validated. It's amazing the things you remember from your past are often very crucial to your journey. But I've shared this before for another topic, but at recess time in grade school, you know what they do at recess? Run around, scream. I couldn't do it. I stood on the side. I can still remember thinking, I can't do that. Something's wrong with me. Why couldn't I do it? I was weighed down with heaviness and sadness from the addiction and the verbal abuse, you see? So what do I assume? I'm not okay. The other memory I have is I was taking a bus home, which I don't understand how that happened, but I was about 6. And the bus driver said, when I was getting off, well, you never smile, little girl. And he had such disdain in his voice. Do you see? And that just confirmed my thought. I'm not okay. So a lot of sadness. But again, the good news is we can heal. Does anybody remember the quote at the end of the PR? Let's see if I can remember. At the end of the PR Mark sent out by Swiss psychologist Alice Miller, she said, the human spirit is resilient and can always rise from the ashes as long as a person can draw breath. Now, that's a wonderful truth. Our human spirit is resilient. We need to do our part to nourish it, though. And you're here, and I admire and respect you for being here. And I hope that it will nurture your spirit. So now what I want to do is pause for 1 minute and have you close your eyes and go within, try to stay focused. Your task is to try to surface any core negative belief you might have had from your childhood that is self-sabotaging. Okay, I'm going to look at my watch and be quiet for 1 minute. Okay, let's come back together. Does anybody want to share anything about, no pressure, because I know that's deeply personal, but Paula?
When you said about that one child, the parents made a comment about things were okay, I'll paraphrase, into a UK. And I'm reminded of the impact of a parent's words. Not intentional, but when a parent says, "What's wrong with you?" that goes in. So that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Paula. Thank you for that. There are many things that parents say offhand, like, "You'll be the death of me yet." That is not funny. If a child is vulnerable, well, am I that bad? Or there's another one, "You're just like your dad." And you know what that means when it's said like that, right? So yeah, parents are, even if they're not being overtly abusive, those comments can do damage. Absolutely, Paul. Thank you for reminding us of that. You can't do anything right. That's a famous one. I see heads shaking. Share.
When I was about 4 or 5, we were at my uncle's house and he had a pond. And my aunts and my mom all got together to get a picture taken, and I wanted to get my picture taken with them. My mother said to me, "You don't belong here." She didn't mean it.
Wow.
What she meant really was it was just all women, adults.
Uh-huh. But the way
But
she said.
I've never felt like I belonged. More, I'm okay now, but
Right.
it was a long time before I thought, well, you know what, that was kind of a stupid way to put it.
Well, of course. Yeah, and it
But
had
it does impact you.
yes.
I mean,
Yeah, the not belonging. Right. Anna Marie, is that your name? Did I get it?
Nowadays, hopefully people are more aware, but as an adult, if you say a thoughtless comment to a child, how should you try to make that up or rectify it?
If you say what, Anna Marie?
Thoughtless comment.
Oh, okay.
You don't mean to.
Right, but you realize you said it.
Yeah.
Okay, I better repeat that for the Zoom people. Anna Marie asked, if you do make a thoughtless comment to a child that could hurt, well, how do you make it okay?
Yeah.
And I think that's an excellent question. The first thing is awareness. You're aware, uh-oh, I regret that. And then I would tell the child, wow, I regret that. I didn't really mean it. And then say something positive that's real. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I hope you'll do that. Yeah, I think it's important. I know with my kids, I made a lot of mistakes. I was 21. I didn't know what I was doing. I made mistakes. And as I grew, I apologized. And then at times they've let me know, and well, you know, I didn't like when you did this or that. And they're right. But what we have to realize is we make mistakes, but we must learn from them. As one writer puts it, the only real mistake is the one from which you learn nothing. You just keep going. So when we learn, we let go and not beat ourselves up and forgive ourselves. You know, this is an ancillary, but it reminds me about, we're talking about with babies and how they're mirrored, if they're mirrored joyfully. I started doing this recently and I'm enjoying it. It goes like this. When I'm in line somewhere, there's often a baby, you know, in a big old, and so when I have eye contact with them, I smile. You probably do that too, just spontaneously. They're so cute. Well, what I've noticed is after I smile, they keep looking at me. They want more because a lot of babies don't get any. Right, Gigi?
I was going to bring that up. Sometimes it's not what's said, but what's not said, apathy.
Thank you. That's a great thing for us to pause and notice. Gigi said sometimes it's not what's said, it's what's neglected to be said and comes across as apathy, indifference. Yeah, I remember, that reminds me of a memory from a client I worked with, and we couldn't figure out why she was down on herself. We went over everything, because if you identify the source, you can heal it. So finally, she had this memory that every day after school, she had cookies with her mother, but the mother always had a look of contempt on her face. And somehow, even though they were having cookies, that look of implies, I don't really want to be here with you, but she took it in and it hurt her. So again, the power that adults have over the little ones. Yes, Judy.
I was a registered nurse in my first job, was a newborn nurse.
Oh.
And I used to walk the babies from the nursery, carry them individually and handed them to the mother.
Wow.
And then we go back after the feeding and we pick the baby up. And I walked into a room and I was 21, no children of my own. I walked into the room and the baby was at the foot of the bed. And I was livid. Of course, I'm worried the baby's gonna fall off.
Yes,
And if
yes.
anybody's worked with newborns, some of them can.
I believe it. Yes.
But I know it's sort of, I was looking at the mother, why did you do that? And she looked at me and she said, you know, this is my fourth or fifth. And she said, I know what to do. She said, he's done. I feeded him.
Oh,
He was very
wow.
deeply wrapped, but at the foot of the bed. And I thought, my God, that child's gonna go home. And when you compare her to most women, when they get that baby, first thing they do is look at them and they know how
Yes.
beautiful. I've seen some of the ugliest babies you've ever seen in your entire life. And the mother looks at them like they're made of
Yes,
gold.
yes.
And all I could think of was that poor child's gonna go home and he's gonna be put in the corner.
Yes,
So mom can get her work done.
exactly,
And I felt
Judy.
so bad, but always stayed
Yes.
back in my mind.
Well, understandably, that was a powerful observation. Did you Zoom people hear that? They're not replying. No, usually somebody will, so I don't know.
It's very difficult to hear what the people are saying. They need a microphone or something. I
Ye-
can't.
Yes, that's why I want. Oh, Ruth, hi, Ruth. Hi. Ruth, I'm going to repeat what Judy said, okay? And I'll try to repeat for you folks because we don't have a microphone, okay? So Judy told us that she was a nurse at a newborn nursery at 21, and she delivered the babies to the mothers for feeding and picked them up. When she went into this room, the baby was at the foot of the bed. And she said to the mother, what's going on? And the mother said, oh, I already have 4 kids. He's done eating. And so Judy talked about, imagine that baby is going to perhaps go home, be in a corner so she can get her cleaning done. So it was an example of what can happen to hurt a baby's self-image and growth, because a baby has no self-awareness yet. It picks up the sensory, but doesn't know yet what it's like. Gigi?
I'm thinking that's why it's so important today that they're accepting that postpartum depression is a reality. Because even without the mothers, that sensory loss occurs.
Yes.
But it was a stigma in the past.
Right.
Every mother has to love every child and condition.
Right.
And it's so important that we recognize and treat it.
I
today.
agree, Gigi. I'll repeat that to you folks. Gigi talked about how these days postpartum blues is not considered a stigma. It can happen, and the mother needs a lot of support and a lot of healing. And so that is a plus, that there's no stigma anymore, that it is, some mothers need help and sometimes it just comes naturally. So now, do you Zoom folks have any questions or comments? Okay.
I'm good. I'm learning a lot and I'm listening.
Who is that?
I'm Elaine. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Elaine.
Thank you.
Okay, the names I see, Elaine, Deb, Douglas, Marty, and Ruth. Is that right? Okay, I'm glad you're all there. Okay, so thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. And we're going to move to, okay, so if you don't love yourself enough, you might have the self-sabotaging beliefs. And if you have those beliefs, then they would affect your thoughts, your 60,000 thoughts a day. And as I mentioned, well, I did one here on December 9th, retrain your brain so that you use the 60,000 thoughts to support yourself. However, if you're down on yourself, chances are you're going to use the 60,000 thoughts in negative, maybe self-defeating ways, such as you're going to maybe put yourself down. Oh, maybe repeat mother's words. Oh, I can't do anything right. Or put others down even. And you might compare to others. Oh, I'm less than. Oh, look at her. She's better than me. There's only one comparison that's valid. That's the false self, yours, to the true self, you. So if you don't love yourself enough, I call that, well, you're in your false self. That's not your true self. And then you heal that and you grow into your true self. So as Sharon pointed out about her therapist said, make a list of what you like, what you don't like. That's I'm going to suggest something similar, but why do you do that? Because you want to identify how you're pulling yourself down. So you want to become very aware of your 60,000 thoughts. And are you using them on worry, anxiety? Are you grumbling a lot? Usually if you don't feel good about yourself, there's a certain, there's a tendency to be negative because you feel a sense of wrongness about yourself. And that's a terrible feeling. Yes, Rhonda.
I used to tell my brother when I would feel that way or whatever, I feel whiny. I just feel whiny.
That says a lot.
I'm like whining to myself.
Right,
I can't do this. I can't.
right. So Rhonda was saying when she felt down on herself, she would say, I feel so whiny. I can't do this. That conveys a lot, Rhonda. Yeah. And so we want to eradicate negative self-talk because it pulls you down. So that's a whole talk, which I will be doing next Saturday at 1 o'clock in Oakmont, Retrain Your Brain. But for now, I'll give 2 brief strategies if you're struggling with negative self-talk. One would be thoughts, the ABCs of thought stopping. A, you're aware, there's that thought that's pulling me down. B, you block it. You say, no, I'm not doing it. C, you change the thought. You must put another thought in there. If you leave it empty, the old one will come back. Because our thought habits are kind of addictive. They wear grooves in our brain if we've been doing them for decades. But we need to create new grooves. Leave those old grooves alone and they'll dry up and you'll have new grooves that lift you up and support you. Okay, is that clear, the ABCs? And the other one is when your mind is torturing you, to shift the focus, to shift it. A reliable shift to me is gratitude, because we always have something to give thanks for. Right? Why don't we do that for a minute? How about people saying what they're grateful for? Remember, it doesn't have to be big. It can be, for me, I'm starting to say, wow, I'm grateful. My furnace is still working. It's been working hard, right? Okay, let me hear some gratitude in the room. Zoom people could say something.
Plenty of food to eat.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Glad I'm still alive.
That's right.
Grateful for life. Right. More?
I'm glad I put my surgery is over.
Vicky says, I'm glad I'm a work in progress. Great. I love that. Wait, did one of you say something?
I did. I said I'm glad my surgery is over.
Oh, I think that was Ruth, right?
Yes.
Ruth said she's glad her surgery is over. And it was successful, I think. Yes, Ruth, that's great to be grateful for. Yes, that's a big one. Well, they're all big to me. We are surrounded by gifts. Everything's a gift. Everything. And if we're aware of that, that really helps push out the negativity that we may be addicted to. Grumbling, complaining. And that 2 more ways, there are a lot, but I'm just sharing 3 ways to shift the focus. Gratitude, going into nature. Nature is very nourishing. It connects you to the creator. Seeing beauty is uplifting. And then the 3rd way would be to call a friend. You've got to make sure it's a trustworthy friend who will listen to whatever you're trying to grapple with. Okay? So are there any comments or thoughts on the self-sabotaging negative self-talk before I move on into I call it the SS troops, self-sabotaging troops, because they're like the SS troops, right? Destroy. Yeah. Any comments or questions? Not yet? Okay, no more right now. Anybody? Yeah.
I have one. It's Deb on Zoom. I'm
Hi, Deb.
grateful. Hi, everybody. I'm grateful for great neighbors in spite of the environment that we're in here in America right now. Everybody's great, no matter, it doesn't matter your politics or anything. We all love each other.
Wonderful. Did you hear what Deb said? She's grateful for her neighbors despite all the politics. We need to love each other. Bravo, Deb, I agree. Absolutely. And if we love ourselves, it's a lot easier to spread the love. Anyone else before we move into the self-sabotaging habits and behaviors? Well, as Aristotle said, we become what we habitually do. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, right? So we want to, with this journey towards loving ourselves, we want to become very aware of what are my typical habits. Because sometimes we kind of sleepwalk through life without noticing. Excuse me while Okay, so here's a sampling of habits, and maybe you'll add to them. People-pleasing behavior. If you don't, and I did it. Remember, I was real shy. I thought I was weird and not okay. So if I was with people, I wanted them to approve of me because I didn't approve of myself. And that's one of the pluses of when you love yourself, you don't look for that approval. You might enjoy it, but you don't need it because you're taking care of your own needs in a healthy way. So people pleasing is one of these habits. Being a doormat for somebody, a high tolerance for mistreatment. Because if you were mistreated in childhood, you think it's normal. And we go to the familiar. We go to the familiar even when it's toxic. I wanted to give you an example of that with a woman I worked with recently. One of the habits is hoarding. Okay, this will relate to what my point. Because if you don't feel secure with people, you get security from possessions. So this particular client could not walk in her apartment. You know how you've heard of that. So she decided it was time and she made space. And then this was really interesting to me. She wanted the space, but when she had it, she almost felt guilty. It was unfamiliar. She couldn't enjoy it right away, even though it was what she wanted. Do you see? Hello, welcome.
Hi, I didn't know you were here today.
Well, it's been on the calendar a while, but welcome. We've done a lot, but you can, with Mark had it on the calendar for a
I
month.
know.
That's okay. What's your name?
Police.
Hi, Felice. Just pick up what you can now. So do you see my point there about she got what she wanted, but it was so unfamiliar and she probably thought she didn't deserve it. So we want to be aware that when we're changing, be careful. If we've had a toxic environment, be careful that we don't recreate it because it's familiar. So, I mean, here's another example. People who don't love themselves often choose friends or partners who are needy like they are. Like attracts like, right? And sometimes they're willing to be controlled by a partner or a friend even. So, and that reminds me of another client. I mean, I appreciate the clients give me the raw material to make it come alive, right? So this client, she kept telling me about her best friend who was treating her terribly. And at one point, I always call these people Mary. Mary, you know, are you aware that friendship is usually they enjoy each other, they support each other, they have fun together. So how come, you know, then we did our excavation work on, well, what's the root of that? Well, it turns out the friend was exactly like her mother. See? She was used to that kind of treatment and it was familiar. So these are the kind of things we want to become aware of to embrace our true self more fully. To cleanse out the behaviors that aren't supporting us. Other patterns are isolation. That would be what I did because I was so shy of the world. I wanted to be alone all the time. Then people often develop escapist habits if they feel insecure and uncomfortable with themselves. Escapes can be a good behavior, but it's just done out of balance. Escape could be going to the gym. Anything that's out of balance, being busy all the time, busy. Hey, doing good things. Yeah, but it's out of balance and losing yourself. Lisa, you're really nodding to that.
I just keep moving and moving and moving and moving. For what?
I don't know.
So you're identifying, Lisa is identifying with that habit. Busy all the time. It's a clue. It's a clue to ask you to pause. What am I running from? And what needs attention? What do I need to give enough loving attention to myself, which is the healing way. So escapes, or then even sadly addictions, are almost always related to the person doesn't love themselves, doesn't value themselves. So they get addicted to a substance that takes them to another sphere, sadly. Yes, the Lord. And then trust issues. People who don't love themselves often trust too easily because they're yearning for contact. They might trust untrustworthy people or never trust anybody because it's scary. And then another habit, it certainly doesn't apply to any of you, would be the person who doesn't take any interest in self-care, grooming, what they have on. So that's kind of a sampling of behaviors that are self-sabotaging. So do you have any comments or questions, or do you want to add a habit that you're aware of that is self-sabotaging that I might not have named?
I mean, it's just wrong to assume that, I think of addiction as even being a workaholic.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
Gigi.
Okay.
That Gigi said, what about a workaholic? Well, to me, two things. It could be merely an escape, like I work all the time, a form of busy, or it could be a real addiction, because there is such a thing as a process addiction, where you're addicted to a behavior, really addicted. And oftentimes it is work.
You think of people who spend hours and hours at a gym or hours. and
Yes.
I can see that's all, I see where it's both things, but.
Yes, it can be one, yeah. These,
I was always thought moderation is the key.
it
'Cause you can
is,
become addicted to having too much fun, not enough fun, too
Right.
much work, not enough work.
yes.
You know, it's that middle ground.
Yes. So Gigi's talking about how addictions are possible with any behavior, really. And as she put it, you could become addicted to having too much fun or not enough fun. That would be me. I was okay with being isolated, but boy, I didn't have any fun. Yeah. Thank you, Gigi.
I have one. It's
Yes.
Elaine. And a person that needs to gaslight constantly, a person that needs to blame everybody else for their either inadequacies, incompetence, they don't do things right, and so they blame somebody else. And where do we go with this?
Oh, Elaine, that is so true. That is, did you hear what Elaine said? That people who gaslight all the time, who want to blame others all the time. Thank you, Elaine, because I will put that on my list. That is a prevalent one for people who don't want to look within to see, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change to feel better? They focus on the other. In a way, it's a form of comparison, in a way. No responsibility, but diverting from your responsibility to blaming others. Thank you, Elaine.
I
Yeah.
would like to even hear something like that. I'll come to see you at Oakmont. Would that be for the Train Your Brain or not? No.
I'm
you
not
could
sure
touch on-
what I don't, you're asking if I'll be talking about that at Retrain Your Brain, Elaine?
Yes.
Well, it's connected indirectly because it has to do with thoughts. So if you're going to be a gaslighter, that means you're having thoughts that aren't healthy. It's a form of negative self-talk. So the things that I say next week, Elaine, will be applicable to any situation like that because it begins with a thought. Does that make sense?
It does. Perfect.
Okay. Well, I hope to meet you there. Okay. So any other thoughts or questions about the habits before we move on? Felice, can you catch up at all? We're talking about how to love yourself, and we're talking about what not to do that is not loving. to do the habits you've just heard of. Felice just came late, so trying to,
Feel bad if I do.
well, that's okay. Come back on February 17th for part 2. And I'll give a summary of this on February, pardon?
2, and it's what time?
2 to 3:30. Yeah, Paula,
For those who have missed the first part,
yes.
it's gonna be, on YouTube.
Yes, Mark is going to.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me, Paula. Mark has agreed to do it on YouTube. Uh-huh. Yes, February 17th. And because of Paula, I'm going to give you a handout today, which kind of summarizes some key points here.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but there is, oh, not allowed to move. Yeah, I do too, Debbie. I'm giving a handout, but we have to correct one line. So someone remind me that we have to, after I give you the handout, I want to adjust it, one line, okay? Okay, so where was I? Okay, we wound down on the habits. Elaine added the gaslighting, which was good. So to do this work, I want to summarize it into 3 words. You need to desire it. You need to desire to love yourself more. D for desire. I, you need to intend to do it. Desire isn't enough. See, you got to add that intention. And then E, eviction. What do you think I mean by eviction? Yes, Debbie got it. Getting rid of what we've just talked about. Evict those beliefs that pull you down. Evict those thoughts that sabotage you. Evict, change those behaviors. Yeah, it's very hard, Deb, but nothing worthwhile is easy. And nothing is as valuable as embracing your own worth, because it impacts everything. So anyway, I got a kick out of this. D-I-E, die. I want you to die to your former self if it is sabotaging you. We've got to die to what is in order to have space for the new and the healthy behaviors, right, Paul?
Nobody can do this for you.
Absolutely.
This is your journey.
It has to be you, but it makes sense to get a guide or to read, because I couldn't have done my journey without a therapist. Some people can. You know what helps if you don't want to have a therapist? A good friend can be like a therapist. So I promote friendship, but you need a friend who will listen to understand, not to tell you what to do. You need a friend who can tolerate tears. You know, there are friends who will say, don't cry. That friendship won't work. It might work in other ways. You could play tennis with that friend. But if you want to share your soul, you need a friend who will listen with all their heart, who will care, and who will let you cry. Because this work involves crying. What, Deb?
It will help someone also that you feel safe.
Oh, absolutely. Deb said it helps. You've got to feel safe with this person or you won't share. And we're going to get into that now. Our final segment is to begin the journey to the true self. Now I'm going to list some habits that you can begin doing to break down the barriers. If you have the barriers we talked about under the 4 A's, you can begin to dismantle those. And so let me jump ahead a minute. The reason I have part 2, February 17th at 2, and by the way, I want to share with you some sad news for me, is that Mark Hudson is retiring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. See, Mark, how you're appreciated? He is staying on for my part 2. And I'm gonna miss him. He is so helpful and caring about these programs. So at any rate, that's an aside. But so this goal, the goal of today is to clear away barriers so that you can begin to love yourself. And then next time, February, we will talk about, okay, now you're ready to love. How are you going to build that? How are you going to build a loving relationship with you? So you can help, you can start before we meet again, but we'll focus more on that. While you, between now and then, my hope is that you're evicting what isn't loving within you and that you begin to give yourself enough loving attention. Any comments or questions before I, okay. So habits to break down the barriers. You've got to be willing to cry, you know, because if you've had a rough childhood, and almost everyone has had challenges in their childhood, when you see them and you realize more fully what you didn't receive, it's sad. And so there's a mourning, there can be a mourning period of grief where you cry. You see? And it's so important to tears cleanse the wound. So many people don't want to cry. Cry. It reveals your deepest truths too. Paula?
The Quakers have one saying about the gift.
Yes. Paula said the Quakers call it the gift of tears. So does my guru, Richard Rohr, the Franciscan. He calls it the gift of tears. Tears do not mean you're weak at all. They mean you care. But tears have gotten a bad rap in our culture. Rhonda.
Somewhere in the Bible that Jesus or I think the angels maybe collect your tears in a jar or a vial.
That's right. There is something in scripture. We're not sure where, but Rhonda said there is something where your tears are collected in a vial. Mm-hmm. So be willing to cry as you break down the barriers. And then we already said this, but talk. It's really important to put words to your journey. So find that trusted friend or use a journal. We've been there before in this room. We've talked about that, the power of journaling. Journaling is therapy. In fact, I would share with you that I have 38 journals and I am rereading them because at my age, it is encouraged to do a life review. And so I'm really blessed that I have these journals and it's a mixed blessing because I see the mistakes I made more fully. And I think, oh, Eileen, how could you do that? And then I have to keep learning from them and forgive myself. So at any rate, put words to your story. That helps you get it out of your body and you get a better perspective on it. I just kind of said this. Identify your mistakes, learn from them, let go, and forgive yourself. You must forgive yourself. And then it could be helpful if you don't already. I'm guessing a lot of you already do this. Do good somewhere. Do an act of kindness somewhere. Because when I was making this journey, I remember saying to myself, I don't know if you are good, Eileen. I don't know. I wasn't as faith-filled when I made this journey, so I didn't have the grounding of the spirituality like, yeah, God made you and you are good. But I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm good. So I devised a way to test myself. And that was, I heard that the woman who used to own the house we were living in was very sick and was bedridden. So I said to myself, if you're good, go and visit her once a week. I gave myself that test and I passed it. So I got a little glimpse of, yes, you have goodness in you. So whatever it takes, find your goodness and expand it. And I'm guessing you all do acts of kindness already, but I wasn't. I was self-centered. I was writing. I always wrote about something that I wanted to be interested in, not about what good it might do. So, okay, let's see what else. Oh, well, I've already said it, but it bears repeating. Watch out for the lure of the familiar, because sometimes the familiar is toxic.
Watch out for.
The lure, the attraction of the familiar. And then invite your true self into the light. As you're doing this, kind of keep giving yourself messages. I am beginning to embrace my true self more and more. You know, Pope Francis, this isn't about religion, it's about spirituality, but I love this quote. He said, there's a divine spark in everyone. And I really believe that. There's a divine spark in everyone. And sometimes it gets real low, like the ember is low, but it never goes out because we are children of a divine creator. So we have divine DNA. And let that encourage you that you have more potential within you than you realize. Paula?
Just as you were saying, that came to mind that, you know, God says that we are made in his image and he doesn't make junk.
That's right. Right. Paula reminded us that God doesn't make junk. We are valuable. Yes. Any questions or comments?
I would about the journey, if you could. When I was a junior in high school, our advanced English class, we had to write our autobiography. And
I couldn't hear you. You have to write what?
I'm sorry,
I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. In
So
our
when you
English
were
class
in
in
your
11th
mind.
grade, each of us had to write our autobiography. My dad had just died. I had no, I was just numb, but I have this journal at home and it says, my journey alone.
Wow.
Because I didn't know what kind
How
of journey I was on.
powerful. You still have it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you reread it?
And when,
But let me tell the Zoom people what you said. So
Yeah.
did Paula told us that when she was in high school, she had to write an autobiography and her dad had just died. So she was confused and didn't know what to do, but she still has that journal and it's called My Journey Alone.
until, after my mother died, I went down to the caring center, Highmark had a caring
Yes,
center
I
for
remember
children
that.
with
Yes.
cancer. And I went in to volunteer, and on the wall was this tree that's on the front of my
Journal. Oh, the same tree.
So I felt
It,
like this was part of the healing.
how wonderful that you belonged there. Yes, yes. So Paula was saying that when she went down to volunteer at the caring center, it was a grieving center, wasn't it, that Highmark sponsored? When she walked in, there was a tree on the wall and the same tree is on the cover of her journal. So synchronicity. I love synchronicity. It's a blessing to see that. Anna Marie, I think you had your hand up. After.
Yeah, I had a question. I have a long-time acquaintance. I don't see her that often, but she always puts herself down with jokes. And sometimes people laugh. I never laugh, but why do you think people do that? You know, about her appearance or?
Just because, why do they do it? Because
Yeah.
they don't love themselves. And that's how she feels. And maybe someone, and maybe her dad put her down physically but I admire the fact that you don't laugh.
Well, you feel
And-
uneasy, most people. And I think some people laugh because they are uneasy.
Right, exactly, Anna Marie. But I would, if you could consider saying to her, you know, I'm really not comfortable when you put yourself down. I don't see you that way. Some little word like that might be helpful, Anna Marie. We all need affirmation. There's not enough affirmation in the world. Sharon.
It's a kind of protection. If she says it first, if you say it, it doesn't hurt as much because she's already prepared herself for disapproval or dislike or
But
whatever.
she's among friends, people that like her.
It doesn't matter. If you don't like yourself, you don't
Right.
understand that other people do like you. You know,
Yes.
It's hard.
That's right, Sharon. Yes, that's excellent. Sharon was saying that this person that Anna Marie mentioned is protecting herself from someone else putting her down. She does it first. And Anna Marie says, but these people like her. Yeah, but she doesn't believe it. She doesn't know it because she doesn't like herself. So it's all related to that. See how this is the single most important aspect of your life, whether you love yourself, your true self, or whether you put yourself down. Felice.
Yeah, I don't know, I won't give the name, but I have a cousin. And because her mother put her down so much, she can't, it's hard for her to believe that she is, that she's very smart. She's valuable, she's pretty, she's got a lot going for her. But it
She
always
won't
comes
believe
back,
it.
No matter
It's
how many
really sad.
compliments people would give her about that she needs them, or how intelligent or classes she went to, it didn't matter.
It's really sad. Felice is describing a cousin who gets all kind of compliments about her
And she deserves them.
intelligence,
I mean.
and she deserves them, but she will not believe one of them. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning. She believes something about herself that isn't true. And well, she has to do the work of saying to herself, my mother was wrong and I am, and then list the valuable things about her. But this is real, Felice, that it can be that intense
Mhm.
of a barrier and you need help dismantling it.